niggas is dancing, and the pills is ambience, the lighting is ambient, the housewives is outside the booth cause they can't be in. Oh, you fancy? Oh yeah, I'm the fanciest. They said summer was canceled, but I got plans and shit. Where my advances is, ladies, it's June, July, where all the cancers is. Show me your hands and shit. Even if you ain't a cancer, throw up your hands to this, cause most of y'all cancerous. Michael B. Jordan call you right now, you answering. Even if you got a man that love you, you scandalous. You gon' take the chance and shit. You know that relationship is probably in shambles, and you know you a fan of his. Know if he gon' bring you to Miami, you scrambling to pack all your luggage, get on a plane and land in it. Yeah, I'm just talking out of pocket now, I know y'all sick of me. I look at the score and y'all can't be counting the victories. It's still all love between us despite all the history. It's still October forever minus the trickery. Talk about a flip and switch challenge. It's been challenging for 10 years cause niggas been out here switching on me and showing how much realer that some of they bitches can be.
Every year I set this league up, every year, and I never win. This was the year! Bullshit!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Finding Happiness, episode 3. This is going to be a solo episode, my first solo episode so far. Will could not make it tonight. He's out doing family things. Personally, I wish I had something better to do than going through 50 offseason fantasy football trades when we are still 9 days away from week 1, but I think this will be super interesting for record keeping and for looking back in the future and for analyzing, where are we at from the end of last season. So that's going to be the bulk of today's episode. We're going to not rank every single trade, but just go through, pick a winner and a loser from every single trade. And then at the end, we're going to compare everyone's rosters from the end of last year to their rosters now, and kind of rank who had the most improvement. So that is what we are going to do. And let's get into it. It's just me tonight. I guess I have Keep Trade Cut. That's technically my co-host tonight. So this first little thing we have here is who traded the most this offseason. Now, I thought it was going to be a little bit worse than it was. 23 for your boy. I mean, that's a lot. Like, I'm not going to lie, 23 in 5 months, I would say. That's not great. That's like a trade a week. But, when you're striving for greatness, you can't be content. I would say being steadfast and not trading, that's just not where I want to be at. But I feel like our distribution for our league is pretty good. 23 for me, Ahmad and James at 17. A piece, Chris at 14, Will at 11, Ethan at 10. So 6 of our 10 people had double-digit trades. Now, the interesting thing is that Gill, James Ball, and Mills were 3 of our 4 finalists last year. Are they resting on their laurels at the bottom 3? I'm not to say. People are saying that. I'm not saying that. But let's move on. So we are going to go in chronological order, I hope. I mean, for the most part, it should be pretty chronological. And I'm going to be basing the win-loss on right now. So we are using hindsight. I can't use context clues into what was going on 5-6 months ago. So I'm just going to rank the trades today. I know that's probably not the best way to analyze trades. You should probably look at it more in the moment. But hey, sometimes you're constrained by your capacity. Let's move on to number 1. And it is going to be between me and Mark. I got Odell, I got DK Metcalf, and I got the 109. I believe that was for Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnson. That was that range of the draft. And I gave up Rashad Bateman at 2024 second and the 106, which became CJ Stroud. Gibbs and JSM went at 104 and 105. So you were looking at Stroud. Kincaid went 108. So we're one of the wide receivers. So I'm not going to use Keep Trade Cut on every single one of these trades. I'm also not going to analyze most of these too deep just for time's sake. We don't want this to be a 3-hour podcast. Looking at this, Odell is meaningless. I think DK beats Bateman by a lot, especially with Zay Flowers in town, Odell in the trade, funny enough, and Mark Andrews. So a lot of target competition. I just believe in Zay Flowers a lot, and I think DK really clears Bateman by a lot. And because the 106 was kind of on a similar tier as the 109, I don't think Stroud is too much different. Stroud or whoever you wanted to take a one. I feel like there was a tier gap after JSN and Gibbs at 105. And the 24 second is nice, but I would personally take my side of that deal. So I'm going to give myself a win and mark a loss for that one. I wouldn't get too caught up in these win-loss rankings. It's just more of a fun way to look at these deals. So that's trade number 1. 49 to go. Let's move on to trade number 2. I got the 102, the 108 at 2024 second, and the 210. By the way, I haven't looked at these ahead of time, so I'm kind of going to be reacting to these in real time. Miles Sanders, who's hurt now, and looks like he could be in a committee with Chuba Hubbard. DJ Moore, who's been killing in the preseason, and DK Metcalf. Now the 102 became Anthony Richardson, I would say. So I would rather have Anthony Richardson to DK Metcalf and Miles Sanders together. So is DJ Moore worth the 108 at 2024 second and the 210? I would say no. I would rather have Addison, definitely Zay Flowers, probably Quentin Johnson, maybe not straight up to DJ Moore, but when you throw in the 2 seconds, I would take my side of the deal again. I really do hope that I am not being biased here, but I would love to hear everyone's thoughts below on these trades. Okay, so the third one, I got Jalen Waddle. James McCaskey got Keenan Allen, Joe Mixon at 2024 second and the 110. I lost this trade. Now, I know that we are in the 10-team league and studs are kind of the name of the game, and that's how you win. You can make up for a lot of value in not, this isn't the deepest league, I would say. But I'm a big believer in Keenan this year. I think Joe Mixon is a strong RB2, if not a low-end RB1. And draft capital that became a wide receiver like Addison. Again, this is the same range of the draft. I think James won this trade pretty good. At the time, people said that I won this badly, but I think I lost. So I'm going to give James the win and my first loss. Trade number 4 here. I got Trevor Lawrence, Nick Chubb. By the way, I promised I'm not in all of these trades. I'm only in 23 out of the 50. I got Trevor Lawrence, Nick Chubb, and a 2025 first for the 102, which became Anthony Richardson, the 109. Does every trade have a pick between 106 and 110? By the way, this is going to get easier after the draft because a lot of these I'm just kind of remembering who went in what range. 210 and a 2024 second. So Trevor Lawrence or A-Rich? Is it crazy to say that I would rather have Anthony Richardson? Like, that's probably crazy, right? So I'll say Lawrence is worth, I don't know, man. Lawrence is worth, I guess, Richardson and like a 2024 second, especially Mills's. I would say that's pretty even. So then I got Chubb in a 2025 first for the 109. I would trade Chubb for the 109. And I got a 2025 first for the 210. I would say I win this trade with Will, but I think it was close. I'm a big believer in Anthony Richardson. And if you told me that Anthony Richardson was better than Trevor Lawrence in a year or two, I would not be shocked. I think Lawrence will have a huge year this year, but I mean, Anthony Richardson is a stud. Let's move on to trade number 5. Ethan gets Jamar Chase in 201 for Herbert and a 2024 second. Yeah, it's Herbert. James McCaskey won this trade. I don't think the picks really matter here. It's just Herbert for Chase, and Herbert goes before Chase. I think in the majority of startup drafts, I wouldn't say that it's a terrible trade. Again, this is where context kind of fails us because I'm not sure who Ethan had at quarterback at the time, if he still had Deshaun Watson. So yeah, that's an interesting trade, but I would rather have Herbert than Chase. It is close though. So let's move on to Chris and Will. Chris gets Burrow in a 2024 first for Higgins, Etienne, and Bryce Young. Burrow clears Bryce Young by a lot. Etienne and Higgins for 2024 first. So I guess Etienne in the 103 is equal to Burrow. Somewhat, I would say. And would you rather have Higgins or 2024 first? I guess I'd rather have Higgins. Oh, man. This one's close. Let's see. You know what? Let's use my co-host here. Burrow in a 2024. We'll stay mid first. For ETN. I mean, keep trade cut is also not the best thing. I think this is going to be close though. Yeah, so they have Joe Burrow's side. I think Will won this trade. If I have to pick a winner, I would pick Will here. But I think it's pretty much a tie. That's a good trade. That's probably my favorite trade so far. Let's move on. I got Rondale Moore in a 406 for Sky Moore. I lost this trade pretty badly, I would say. In the long run, none of this matters. But Sky Moore just has more built-in name equity. And because of that, he's just going to keep his trade value longer than an undersized wide receiver in the worst offense in football. So I regret that trade. Nick Mills gets a 23rd for Matt Corral. That's an easy win for Mills right there. Mark, I mean, hey man, I like the belief. We'll just leave it at that. Ethan gets Aaron Rodgers in the 2024 second for David Montgomery in the 203. That's interesting. Now it's Ethan's 2024 second, so it's going to be the 201 most likely. I would rather have the 201 in next year's loaded draft class than the 203, which was like Mingo or Rashee Rice. That range this year. Jaden Reed, maybe. Actually, it was Rice or Mingo in that territory. I think Ethan won that trade. I'd rather have Rodgers than Montgomery. I think Montgomery will be a solid RB2. Maybe Rodgers can capture his upside. Neither of them are really long-term assets. I don't think this is a huge trade either way. But if Rodgers has a couple of big weeks early, I think he just might have more upside. So I'll give Ethan the win there. Okay. Chris gets the 203 for Jacoby Myers. Well, that's a win. There's nothing really you have to say there. I mean, Jacoby Myers should be fine, but with Renfro there, with Adams getting his 35% target share, I think that team has implosion written all over them. So easy win there for Chris. Gail gets Rodgers for Mechie and Justin Ross. Gail wins this trade. Man, does Gil win this trade? I mean, all right, Justin Ross is like a make-believe character. He's not real. I don't think, he's ever actually going to be anything. But Mechie is the interesting one. Like, he was kind of a stud at Alabama. He reminded me a little bit of Waddle. But I think because Gil is in a win-now window, this is a great trade in that it's a win-win. Because Ethan is rebuilding and Gil is going for win now. So I get it for both sides. I'm going to give a win to both sides for this one. I don't think either lost that. I understand why each of them did what they did. So I like that deal. Ahmad gets the 202 and the 309 for Derek Carr and the 305. Ahmad wins this deal pretty easily. Derek Carr sucks. What's his upside? Like 14 points a game, 15 points a game. in a lot of ways, Derek Carr is going to lose you more weeks than he's going to win for you. He's fine, but everyone's fine. Every quarterback has basically the same floor. So picking up the 202 for practically nothing there, I think, is a big win for Ahmad. Chris gets Chris Godwin and Brees Hall for Jalen Hurts. This is horrible by Chris. Like if I could give him 2 losses, I would give him 2 losses. So Ahmad avenges his loss from last trade. Or Ahmad won last trade. But yeah, man. Hurts for Brees and Godwin. Like Ahmad fleece there. Let's move on. To back to me, thank you. It's been a while since one of my trades was there. It's funny for me. I go through pulses where when I get an idea of what I want my team to be, I trade until I get basically there, and then I'll go dormant for like a couple weeks. So right here I get Russell Wilson, James Cook, 202, Bijan Robinson, and the 309 for Chubb, Debo, and Trevor Lawrence. So Trevor Lawrence is equal to Bijan and James Cook, I would say. Yeah, I would trade Bijan and James Cook for Trevor Lawrence. Maybe. Maybe. We'll say Bijan and Trevor Lawrence are equal. I think I lost this trade pretty bad, though, looking at it. I would trade James Cook, the 202, and the 309 for Chubb, and I'd rather have Debo than Russ. And I'd probably rather have Trev than Bijan. So I think Ahmad did win that trade pretty easily, dropping me to 3-3 in my trade rankings. Really fun trade, though, I would say. A lot of moving parts right there. Speaking of moving parts, moving the 101 right back. So I enjoyed having Bijan for 8 hours. Kadarius Toney, Drake London, the 105, which became Jahmyr Gibbs. The 105 I felt was the crucial pick in this draft because it went Bijan, A-Rich, Bryce, either order, and then Gibbs and JSN in either order. And those were my tier 1. So I really wanted this 105 from Ethan, got the 201 as well. Gave up Mike Evans, Bijan, and 2 picks that don't matter. Mike Evans really doesn't matter. Yeah, I would rather have Drake London and Jahmyr Gibbs and the 201, than Bijan. So I think I won that trade. And I think Ethan knew that he was losing that trade when he made it, but he just really wanted Bijan. Next trade. I got DeAndre Swift and the 306 for the 108. Well, that's horrible by me. And I did that right when he was in trade rumors. Yeah, so I lost that one. Big dub by Chris. I think Chris is going to beat me in a couple trades here, just from my memory. Right here, I get Dalvin Cook, the 206, and the 109 for DeAndre Swift and Hollywood Brown. Okay. Swift and Cook are probably about equal. So I got the 109 and the 206 for Hollywood. I'll take that every day of the week. That's a loss for Will. Easy money. Let's move on. David Montgomery, Kyle Pitts, and a 2025 first for me for Dalvin Cook, Mark Andrews, and the 109. Okay, Demont and Cook are relatively equal. I know Demont has more, I guess, another year of value probably after this, and Dalvin's probably toast. But, I mean, are either of them really going to be difference makers in the end? Probably not. So I'll cancel them out for each other. Pitts and Andrews, it depends where you're at. They're 1A, 1B in Dynasty tight ends. I think Pitts obviously carries more risk. He also carries more long-term reward in that he could be generational. In the 2025 first for the 109. I don't know. We'll see what Keep Trade Cut says. I think this is pretty much as equal of a trade as you could really have. I think I'm basically punting off assets for long-term flexibility here. Just in the fact that Andrews will lose value over time as he ages, where Pitts will, I mean, he could lose value, but I think he's just such a name. So they like the Dalvin Andrews side of things better. I'm fine. I'm fine giving James a dub for that. Personally, I'm fine with that trade for my side, but this would be one that I would want to hear. Everyone's reactions below. Trade 20, so 40% of the way done. Oh, this one's hard. David Bell, the 104 and the 106. So let's start, putting people's names in. JSN. All right, JSN, Stroud, and David Bell. So JSN and the thirds and David Bell don't matter. So JSN and Stroud for Gibbs and a bunch of seconds. I think Mark won that trade. I just think it was such a flat tier this year from Stroud through the mid-second that I think, at the time I was fine with that, mostly because it allowed me to guarantee that I was getting Gibbs. Mark was in between Gibbs and JSN, and although I love JSN, I needed a running back at the time, which is funny now because of how many I have, but I really wanted Gibbs. I thought I saw him as a Christian McCaffrey type prospect, so willing to lose a trade to get my guy would be my summary of that trade. James McCaskey gets Madison, 208, 308 for Chart 205 and a third. So James McCaskey wins that trade pretty easily. Will drops to 1-4 on trades this offseason. Yeah, that's pretty easy. I mean, Madison's the only thing there that really matters. Easy money. Chris gets 205 and 305 for 4th and 203. I'm not even gonna rank this trade. Like it's just like I don't know. Like I have no idea who went where, what the end of a tier was in the early second. So I'm not even gonna rank that one. I got Latavius Murray and Leonard Fournette for the 304. I'm gonna give myself a loss here. just I think we should both get a loss, me and James here. I'll give James a win, but that's just a sad trade to make right there. Okay, so I think we are finally to draft day. So this happened during the draft. James Ball gets Keenan and Mac Jones for 107. I think James Ball won this trade. I know that that's going to be a hot take, because you would rather have the young wide receiver. I think for a win now window, I guess this could go down as a win-win, but I don't know. I kind of like Mac long-term. The Patriots just cut all their wide receiver or all their backup quarterbacks today. No more Zappy. He's fully entrenched as the starter. And I really do think Kellen Moore is going to break out this Keenan Allen-led Chargers offense. I'm going to give James Ball the trade. I think they both won, but I think James Ball won by more. So, yeah. That would be my assessment of that. Okay. We are halfway there. Trade 25. I get Cortland Sutton. I lost. I'm embarrassed. Okay. Let me just say, I'm not embarrassed by many trades I made this offseason, despite the fact that right now I'm 5-8. I'm embarrassed by this one. He of the moment got to me. I was drunk for Dalton Kincaid, and I traded a top 10 dynasty wide receiver for nothing. As a result, James Ball got Taysom Hill in the 410 for the 407. I'm gonna give the win again to James Ball here. Mills, I'm pretty sure Mills traded up for Deuce Vaughn was his pick, which might be something, but probably not. And Taysom is just good for vibes, even if he does nothing on the field. And he just has the 5% chance of being a league winner if he plays quarterback in the fantasy playoffs. So for giving up nothing, getting a 5% chance at a true difference maker, I think that's a fine deal. Chris gets Hawkinson in a 2024 second for Pittman and Farmouth. Pretty easy win for Will right here. Although I don't love Pittman with Richardson, I do like Freiermuth quite a bit. And if you look at Hawkinson last year, if you take away his two monster games, he was basically like Tyler Higbee. They have Hawkinson's side winning, but I'm actually going to give Will the win right there. I just think Freiermuth could, and the Steelers offense in general, could take a big step forward. The 2024 second is nice, but if Pittman ends up leaving, Indianapolis seems like a clown show right now. You know, the JT situation. I think he's just talented. So I like to bet on young, talented wide receivers. Okay, DK Metcalf for the third time. I got DK back and Dawson Knox for Saquon. All right, so basically I got DK for Saquon. I lost that trade. I'd much rather have Saquon. I don't know why I'm pondering. Ahmad moving up to 4-1 on trades so far. Let's move on. Chris. All right, 3-team trade. So for these multiple team trades, I'm just going to have the biggest winner and the biggest loser. Chris gets Chase for Brees and Love. I think Chris wins that slightly. I think Brees is generational, so I'll say slightly. Ethan gets Hurts for D-Watch. Okay, Ethan lost bad. That's really bad. Okay, and Ahmad. Ahmad wins, Ethan loses. Ahmad killing it. Ahmad gets D-Watt, who you'd obviously rather have Hurts, but Deshaun Watson, I think, will probably bounce back, be a top 10. He was a top 5 fantasy quarterback yearly when he didn't have his issues. And Brees Hall is generational. And Ethan gave up Chase for Hurt, Chase and Watson for Hurts. So good job by Ahmad there, I think. Okay. I get Chubb, Debo, and Tank Dell, who might actually be something for Waddle. Big win for me. Finally back on the win side. Waddle's fine, but Chubb and Debo are really good win now pieces. Chubb is going round 1-2 turn in redraft. Debo is mid third. Tank Dell looks like a stud. And Jalen Waddle's fine, long-term asset, but I think that's a pretty easy win there. Let's move on. Ethan, Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Will Levis. Will Levis doesn't count as an asset, but Quentin and Jordan Addison. Wow. 2024 first, the 2024 second for Jefferson Evans, 2/3. So he got Quinn Johnson, Jordan Addison, 2024 first and 2024 second for Jefferson. Big win for Ethan. I know at the time I was more on James McCaskey's side of this deal, but it's just like, I know Jefferson is great and he's basically like a third quarterback, but when you're rebuilding, I think it's much better to have flexibility of picks. And that's what this trade allowed for. And if you told me Addison is 60 to 70% of Jefferson, I'm not going to blink at it. Like in a lot of ways, Addison is going to cut into whatever upside Jefferson had when he had a washed up Adam Thielen next to him. So really good job by Ethan there. I get Mixon and Chase Brown. So Mixon in his handcuff for Mike Williams in a 2024 second. If you really skip forward 6 months at the end of the year, I think there's a really good chance I win this trade. But I'm going to say I lose it for now. I think Mixon is a little bit of a hard bet this year. He's a little fragile, but I think the upside is still there to be a low-end RB1. And if he turns that in, I think this was a good opportunity to buy low in his legal situation and buy a little bit on uncertainty. Okay. Saquon Barkley is back and Calvin Ridley, who, he's looking great in preseason for Olave, Ingram in a 2025 second. All right, Ingram is fine. He's like a fine tight end. The second is in 2025, so that's like a third. Like, that's so far away. You figure Saquon has 2 years left of RB1 status, and Ridley might be a stud. I'm gonna give myself a win. Ahmad, I'm giving myself a win, but you have Calvin Ridley now. So, like, I'm giving myself a win because I'm so high on Calvin Ridley. So, in a way, you're still winning, which we'll see here in a second. But getting Olave for that is probably good as well. I'm gonna give Chris and Ahmad both a loss on this one. This was league integrity. This was gambling. This was outside the confines of the Jpdl Constitution. I'm a benevolent commissioner. I like a lot of shenanigans that go on is skin or is water down my back. I let the guys be the guys, but sometimes I feel like my niceness can get misinterpreted as weakness. And when trades like this come around, I really stop and think, am I running this the right way? So yeah, I'm gonna give them both a loss. This was really sad to see, honestly. And there's trades like this in the future, I'm gonna have to come down harder. Okay, let's move on. Chris and Ahmad again. Chris gets Akers interim Ford for J.K. Dobbins. Ahmad is going to win this one because I'm way higher on Dobbins than a running back in a fragile offense where his head coach might quit mid-season. Yes. Okay. So moving on to Chris and James McCaskey. Samaje Perine and a 2024 third. That's interesting. For the 2025 second and a fourth. I know, like, technically James McCaskey won this trade, but I'm gonna give Chris a win because I'm gonna give them both a win. Chris and James McCaskey a win. Just because Chris needed to get that with the uncertainty of the Javonte situation. But James capitalized on Chris's neediness, so win-win right there. 2024 third. Oh, this was, I'm not going to rank this. This was a contingent on Dalvin Cook, I believe, getting released or traded from the Vikings and the Alexander Madison trade from earlier. I'm not a huge fan of contingent trades, but that is what that was right there. I got Hurts, Tank Bigsby, who looks like a stud, and Irv Smith for Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, Chig Okonkwo, and Sam Laporta. Chig and Sam Laporta are both top 10 Dynasty tight ends. I feel very good about that. Kyler Murray is the top 10 Dynasty quarterback. I feel good about that. CJ Stroud, I fear, does not have the upside to ever become a true difference maker at the quarterback position or the super flex position. And for that, I got Jalen Hurts, who is a top 3 asset in Dynasty. I'm going to go to keep trade cut here. I think this is a really hard trade to evaluate. I think on the surface, people would say I win this. But I think Ethan did well on this return. I think for someone who is tanking, you could argue that Kyler Murray is the number 1 asset you would want to have, as he is not going to cost you wins this year, but you feel very secure in him being a top player a year from now. Keep Trade Cut has me winning this pretty substantially, so I will give myself the win. Not going to argue there, but I think that is a pretty fascinating return and approach to a tanking situation. Okay, moving on here. Ahmad gets Christian Kirk and Gus Edwards for Miles Sanders and a 2024 third. I would rather have Ahmad's side of the deal. This comes down to a middling running back and a middling wide receiver, and I would rather have the wide receiver in this situation. And he gets his handcuff in Edwards for J.K. Dobbins. So not a huge win right there, but I will give Ahmad the slight win. I'm not high on the Panthers offense or Miles Sanders this year. Ethan gets Evan Ingram and DJ Moore for Brandon Cooks, Sean Tucker, and Dameon Pierce. Big win here, I believe, for Ethan. Cooks and Tucker are pretty much, I guess you could say Cooks is a little bit of a factor in that he could compete with Michael Gallup for the wide receiver 2 role in the Dallas offense. But are you ever going to really feel great about starting Brandon Cooks on a weekly basis? He feels to me like Julio Jones on the Buccaneers, just someone that is going to flash every once in a while, but you're never, you could tune in to Sunday Night Football and he could go 4 for 37 pretty easily. Dameon Pierce is great, but DJ Moore, definitely a strong asset in that he's a great talent, and we don't know what Justin Fields can be. And I do think Evan Ingram is a solid startable tight end. So I'm going to give Ethan the win right there. Ahmad dropping to 7-5. He's sliding a little bit in his win-loss. Not going to rank this. This was me apologizing to Ahmad for trading Garrett Wilson to Will. Some could say there are some inconsistencies in me not blaming myself for a trade like this. I'm going to move on. I'm getting ETN, A-Chain, and Hollywood Brown for Garrett Wilson in a fourth. So the fourth does not matter. Garrett Wilson for ETN and Hollywood Brown and Devon A-Chain. Now, things have gone as bad as they could for Devon A-Chain since this trade has happened. With that being said, I still do like this trade for me. I'm going to give myself the loss. But I am very high on Travis Etienne. I do think Travis Etienne is one of the top running back talents in the league. And I just want to bet on young running back talent going into year 2. Technically year 3 for him, but with the injury in year 1, technically his year 2 season. And Hollywood Brown should be able to get a lot of targets. I know that Garrett Wilson is phenomenal, of course, especially after that preseason game. So I will give Will the win, but I'm fine losing that trade. I think I like the way it set my team up. Chris gets Judy and Javonte for Cam Akers, George Pickens, and 2024 third. Now, at the time, I thought Chris won this trade, but I have actually switched my pick to Mills. I know I said earlier I'm not high on Cam Akers, but after Judy's injury, hamstring, I believe, I'm starting to wonder if Judy is just one of these guys with a cursed career. Like everything that could go wrong for Judy so far has. Pickens has flashed in the preseason. Would it shock me if Pickens is a better long-term wide receiver than Judy? No. The Steelers are notorious for drafting non-first round wide receivers and turning into superstars. So, and if Cam Akers is a RB1 or a high-end RB2, then I think Mills won this trade pretty easily. So I am going to give Mills high marks here and give Chris a loss. Okay. Let me see real quick how we are doing. We are doing fine. Ahmad gets Amari Cooper and Mike Gesicki. He gives up Odell, Brandon Cooks, and David Njoku. So Odell and Brandon Cooks, again, are never really going to be startable. This is a pretty easy win, in my opinion, for Ahmad. I'm not sure if Mills got a startable player there, especially with Kittle. Like you're really going to start Njoku in the flex, and Amari is a solid wide receiver too, especially if Deshaun Watson can bounce back. Here, I got Lamar, Zay Flowers, and a 2024 first for Jalen Hurts and a 2025 first. Now, this trade comes down to what you think about Lamar Jackson, how close you think he is to Jalen Hurts. I tend to think he is pretty close to Jalen Hurts. He probably has more long-term fragility for the next 3 years, however, with the new offense, with the upgraded weapons. I would not be surprised if he outscored Hurts this year. And I do like Zay Flowers quite a lot. I'm gonna give myself the win here. You know what? This is a little bit more of a heart pick. But I do like that trade a lot for me. I think James did well, though. I would not say he necessarily lost the trade, even though I'm giving him a loss here. Okay, I get Dameon Pierce for Cortland Sutton and James Cook. I'm going to give myself a loss here. I'm not sure it's a horrible trade for me. I think James Cook has more of a name / buzz value than a production value. And what I mean by that is that his ceiling is capped by the offense he plays in, by Josh Allen stealing running back work, red zone work, and Dameon Pierce coming in at the goal line. Cortland Sutton probably gets a little bit of a boost with the Jerry Jeudy injury, so we will see there. I will give myself a loss, but I think it's more of a loss on paper than it will be at the end of the season. We already went through the 6-team trade on last episode, scratch that on our first episode. So I got the loss on that. And who did we end out giving the best side to? I think I gave it to Ahmad. And Will gave it to Ethan. I'm going to give it to Ethan and defer to my teammate who could not make it tonight. Okay, down to 4 more trades. We have made it, ladies and gentlemen. Will gets Alec Pierce for DJ Chark. I'm going to give Will the win there. Chark is going to be better this year, but I'm not sure why Ethan wants points this year. I know Alec Pierce probably won't be anything, but at least he has a better shot for a long-term outlook. I think Ethan lost that trade more than Will won it. Ahmad gets Ayuk for Christian Kirk and Darnell Mooney. Mooney is pretty much a non-factor at this point, so would I rather have Ayuk or Kirk? I would rather have Ayuk. So I'm going to give Ahmad the win right there. 2 more trades. Cole Kmet for Chris, Romeo Dobbs for Mark. I'm spending way too much time on this pointless trade. I'm going to give Chris the win. I'm going to give Chris the win. That trade is just terrible, in my opinion. Like, it's just 2 guys who are never going to matter. I wish someone got 4th. That's who I would have sided towards. And finally, James McCaskey gets Trey Lance. Mills gets a 2nd and Gainwell. I'm going to give James McCaskey the win just because Trey Lance is a social experiment. And because of that, he's just going to hold long-term value because of his name. Could he be flipped for a 2nd or higher at a later date? I would bet yes, as of this moment. He just needs a chance. Is that going to be in Dallas? I doubt it. But maybe he can continue to grow. And that does it for 50 offseason trades. I will be back in a second for the second portion of our program. I hope you've enjoyed so far. Okay, everyone, we are back for our second and final segment of today's video. This will conclude the off-season portion of our coverage as we ramp up over the next couple episodes, focusing on the upcoming season, especially next Wednesday, when we will do a full preview, bold predictions, and getting ready for Thursday night football. I know I am excited as you are, despite the fact that it is 12:30 a.m. So let's wrap this up. In the first part, we talked through all 50 trades, and I was jotting down a win and a loss for each one. Now, these won't add up to the total trades that everyone made, because there were some that I decided not to give wins to, not to give losses to, some where I gave both people a win. So it isn't a perfect measure of who won and lost every trade, but this is a pretty arbitrary kind of exercise we're going through anyways. James Ball and Gil won. You know, when you make 1 or 2 trades, it's not that hard to win them because everyone's coming to you and they are going to bend to your every will. That's all I'll say. I think Ahmad probably won the offseason, given that he went 10-5 with that much volume. Having that success rate is really good. James McCaskey also with a winning record with a lot of trades. Will went 500. Chris went 500. I messed up. I probably should have given a Chris an extra loss, make him 6-7. Hand up. Bad missed opportunity there. I went 9-13, so on my 22 trades, lost a little bit more than I won. But at the end of the day, if I end out pretty much close to even with the amount of fun equity I got out of those trades, I'm fine with it. And then Mills and Mark. So we are going to go through here and rank every team from where they ended last season to where they stand today. And let's start with number 10, Ethan. Now, I will say that this exercise, while helpful for seeing who improved over the offseason, there are obviously certain calculations that weren't applied, such as greater team philosophy. What's the direction? How many draft picks did they accumulate? How many draft picks did they go into the offseason with, right? If you had more draft capital, obviously it was easier to improve without changing your current roster than people who went in without a lot of draft capital. If you had a worse team last year, it was easier to get better over the offseason because it didn't take as much to improve. So, as that being said, again, this won't be a perfect process, but I think it is an insightful exercise to go through to just kind of see who won the offseason, whose fans are more excited today than they would have been at the end of last year, whichever avenue they took to end up in that destination. So for Ethan, right, we know he's tanking. He knows he's tanking. Given that, it's not surprising that his team is worse on paper in 2023 than it was last year. He doesn't have Herbert, Jefferson, or Watson, who were really his big three assets. I would argue Drake London, who he managed to keep after trading twice this offseason, once or twice. He traded three of his big four assets for future draft capital, but he is going to take a hit in the short term because of that. Obviously, if you're looking at this, green means, in my estimation, you improved that spot. Yellow means you took a sidestep. Red means you took a step backwards, and white is the same player. I made sure that I matched up the players evenly on 2022 and 2023 rosters. So, yes, Ethan took a step back. It'll be interesting to see how Kyler Murray does. Could Kyler Murray not be too much of a downgrade from Deshaun Watson once he gets back on the field? If he gets back on the field this year, we will have to see. Moving on to number 9, Nick Mills. Now, Mills's roster is pretty much still set in stone, the way it was at the end of last year. The only two moves in his starting lineup, I do think he accumulated more depth over the offseason, which will serve him well. But going from Jeudy to Cooks is a downgrade, and Cooper to Akers is a downgrade, although I will admit that Akers has a certain amount of upside where I feel is more of a lateral move there. That being said, couldn't put Mills too high when he, got worse at more spots than he got good. So I think Mills got a little bit worse this year, but with more depth, I'm not sure he got too much worse. Will, he took a big step back at the quarterback and tight end positions. Although I will say Hawkinson to Freiermuth, one of my predictions is that that won't look as bad or feel like too much of a step back at the end of the year. But Burrow to Richardson and Lawrence to Russ for this year is going to be a big loss. Do I think it gets offset by the upgrade from Madison and Chubb to Jefferson Wilson? No, I don't. Obviously, he has way more long-term flexibility by doing this, and that was probably a big portion of his strategy this offseason was being more maneuverable going forward, where if you look at 2022, he had a real win now roster that wasn't set up for success in the next couple of years. So he kind of took a step back, reset, assessed where he was at, and decided to get younger, which he accomplished. I don't think he gave up too many projected points by doing that. I think Richardson could easily be a top 10 quarterback this year. I think Freiermuth could be close to Hawkinson. Wilson and Jefferson are probably going to outscore Madison and Chubb. Pittman and Gibson is kind of a lateral move. You could tell me either of them will outscore each other, and maybe this will be a Russ comeback. So despite Will's lower ranking here, I do think he did well to accomplish his objectives this offseason without totally closing his window. Moving to number 7 is me. I got a lot better in my estimation, especially long-term at the quarterback positions, getting Lamar and Justin Fields, as well as adding Nick Chubb for Mike Williams. I feel that those 3 spots are definite upgrades. Now, with that being said, going from losing Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, my big trio of wide receivers, it hurts. As well as Andrews. Pitts will not be as good as Andrews this year. That's more of a long-term play. I am a big fan of Gibbs and Etienne going forward, but for this year, I have to concede that the wide receivers will outscore them most likely. So I feel that I wouldn't say I took a step back. I think my team is going to be much better this year than they were last year. Given that, Garrett Wilson was a rookie, Olave was a rookie. Mark Andrews struggled with Lamar Jackson hurt. But if I were to not make a move last offseason, I still would have felt good coming in with that roster you see on the left. So yeah, I feel good about my roster. You could argue that I took a step backwards, but I think if anything, I took a lateral move and got not younger, but I wanted to build around my running back. So I feel like I did that in a way that didn't totally turn me into a win now team. Number 6 is Gilchrist. This will be pretty quick. He did not make a change. He is still a beast. He is still number 1 in my power rankings. Could he have made more moves? For sure, but he didn't need to. James Ball, another one high in my power rankings. I believe my number 2, Will has him a little lower. He had a good offseason, for only making 2 trades. Upgrading from Lazard to Keenan Allen, huge upgrade for this upcoming year. He still has Kenny Pickett, so while I have Mac Jones listed there, his Patriots bias might show a little. He might play Mac over Pickett. Either way, that was, he could easily change it back to Pickett. And either way, I don't see a big difference there. But going from Lazard to Keenan, good move. He didn't make many moves, but he definitely got an upgrade. I have Jonathan Taylor still listed there. I don't think James Ball will have much of a problem getting to the playoffs. Once he gets there, I do think, especially after a trade deadline, Jonathan Taylor will be an asset in determining his final finish this year. So moving on to number 4, we have Mark. This surprised me a little. Mark, like Ethan, not really competing this year, but he did improve a decent amount. Now, when you have Zamir White as your running back 2, like I said in the opening, it isn't too difficult to improve that spot. But Walker and Zamir White to Bijan and Algier, definite upgrades. DK Metcalf to JSN, I put as a downgrade. It would not shock me if in the second half of the year, JSN outscores DK Metcalf. I think with the injury early on, we could see DK continue to dominate and have a stranglehold on the offense. But JSN is a special talent, and special talents seem to etch their way into the offense. Eventually, we saw that. We always see that with young rookie wide receivers. So I have that as a downgrade for this year. Maybe not as substantial in the second half. Cole Kmet to Kincaid. I'm a big Kincaid person. Even this year, I think that's a big upgrade. Nico Collins to Rashad Bateman. Big believer in the Ravens. I think that's an upgrade. And Fields to Love, an obvious downgrade. But when you take one big downgrade to all those upgrades, I think Mark had a really good offseason, especially considering he's still rebuilding. So the name of the game is still to build up assets, no matter where you are in your window. Let's move to the top 3. We have Chris. Now, Chris is lower on my power rankings. I believe I had him 7th, but I was fascinated to find out that he actually had a pretty good offseason. I don't think Burt's to Huro is a downgrade, but it isn't significant to qualify it as a big downgrade. Etienne to Dillon is a larger downgrade, in my opinion. But going from Higgins and Pittman to Amon-Ra and Jamar Chase, I mean, that's nice right there. That is definitely nice. Dobbins to Godwin and Pickens to Judy, they'll end out near the same in my estimation. Freiermuth to Hawkinson, I keep saying I think they're close, but I would take Hawkinson. if you put a gun to my head, 50-50, I think Hawkinson has the better season. So yeah, after doing this, I started to rethink my ranking a little bit, and maybe Chris deserves to be a little higher. Let's move on to James McCaskey. Now, he had a really good offseason. It is just not as good as our number one because of Chase and Waddle going down to Higgins and Metcalf. Higgins and Metcalf still elite wide receivers. They just aren't those generational difference maker. Feel like you have 4 quarterbacks in your starting lineup wide receivers. Pitts to Andrews is a big upgrade for this year, so that is good. And obviously, when you look at this, you have to look at the quarterback position, going from Rodgers and Jackson to Hurts and Herbert. Big upgrades there. I think Herbert could have a really special year passing the ball. And, I'm not a huge fan of Sanders and Madison at running back, but I have to say it's better than P. Ryan and McKinnon by a decent amount. So really good offseason. Really doing a good job of taking that draft capital they had and building a winner really quickly and taking advantage of what I think is a strong but fragile top of the ecosystem of the league right now, where I think we could have a surprise winner this year. So I like the move. But number one, we have Ahmad. Look at this offseason. Not only did he go 10-5 on trades, but he really dominated it, getting Russell Wilson, Derek Carr out for Lawrence and Watson, 2 top 10 quarterbacks right there, Godwin and Mooney to Waddle and Olave. What? Dawson Knox to Amari Cooper. That's huge. And James Cook to Ayuk. Like, I think that's 6 substantial upgrades. And that's not even including Akers to Dobbins, which I believe is an upgrade as well. Now, Ahmad did go in with the first 2 picks. So you have to take that into consideration, as well as the fact that he really doesn't have too much depth anymore. But does that matter when you make this much of an upgrade to your starting lineup? I don't think so. A year ago, I would have told you Ahmad is in the worst situation in the league. At worst, I think he is middle of the road now. And for this upcoming season, I think he has a very high upside team, and I am interested to see it play out. As I am interested to see all these teams play out in a week from tomorrow. The season kicks off Lions and Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. I hope you guys are looking forward to the season as well. Make sure you stick around all year. We will continue to pump out videos Wednesdays and Saturdays. This has been a solo episode. Hopefully Will is back, or I will try to get another guest for our Saturday episodes primarily. I will see you then. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm tired of speaking, so goodbye.